Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about episode 13 of season 1 of Green Lantern, the animated series called Homecoming. Well, folks, this is it, our big season 1 finale, and I have to say, on pretty much all levels, in terms of storytelling, in terms of action, this episode really delivers. But let's get right into it. And first things first, let's start talking about the characters, and let's start with Kilowog. Now, at the very beginning of this, we get to see his little conversation with Hal about how he's going to stay behind and try and hold the line, or at least buy them some time to warn the Guardians and get all that sorted out. And just the way that scene is played, it's played very simply, very strongly though. And you can see, without any words needed, just how much Hal and Kilowog trust each other. Now keep in mind, Kilowog is basically the drill sergeant of the Green Lantern Corps. He is the guy who essentially trained Hal, and who right from the very beginning, even though he did sometimes have disagreements with Hal, put an enormous amount of trust in Hal by making him the leader of their little band. And here we see that Kilowog's trust in Hal has paid off in spades. Hal's made some mistakes. They've all made mistakes. But here, at the very end of it all, Hal is leading the charge to save Oa, to save the Guardians, and every bit of trust that Kilowog has ever put in him has been 100% justified. And just to see them shake their hands like that, it really was, I think, a wonderful moment for all of them. And then Kilowog goes on to do what even he himself knows has to be a suicide mission. And even a guy as brave as Kilowog has to feel fear at knowing that not only is he probably going to die, but that his sacrifice may not even make a difference. But that's the thing about being a Green Lantern. It isn't that you don't experience fear. It is that you have the will to overcome it. And that is what Kilowog does. He doesn't. There are no words needed for this. The word fear doesn't even need to be mentioned. It's all right there in the context. But Kilowog, being the brave guy that he is, being the willful guy that he is, stands up, and he gives an entire armada and several Red Lanterns a real heck of a good fight. I mean, did you look at that armada that they had coming for those guys? It reminded me an awful lot of those Zentradi fleets of 1,000,000 spaceships from the old Robotech show back in the 80s. I can't even help but wonder if maybe that wasn't a little bit of an influence on that scene, but who knows. So of course then good old Saint Walker arrives, and as he says, he is the first Blue Lantern. If there's a season 2 of this show, and I think we have every reason to assume that there will be, I have a feeling we'll be seeing more of the other Blue Lanterns. But it was really just a very powerful, very wonderful moment seeing those two teaming up together to fight the Red Lantern, and seeing Saint Walker literally take down a Red Lantern spaceship just by touching them. But that is tied to the comics. The blue light of hope does have the ability to quell the power of the red light of rage to stop the Red Lanterns. But even those two are not enough. And to up the things even more, we get Mogo showing up. Now, every once in a while, they'll do the big Green Lantern stories, and it is always a very exciting, triumphant moment when Mogo is willing to step into things. Things have to get really bad for him to do so, but when he does, honestly, it's like Omega Supreme showing up on an old episode of Transformers. When that happens, things are really about to hit the fan. The bad guys are about to get a major stomping, and of course, even the good guys want to cheer when someone like that shows up. And heck, even I, as a fan, kind of wanted to cheer a little bit when Mogo showed up to help out Saint Walker and Kilowog. That really was just a great moment for all three of those characters, and I think one of the highlights of this season. So let's talk about Aya briefly. I think out of everybody here, she, of course, gets the least amount of screen time. And the whole thing with her having that solitary tear run down her eyes. I mean, I understand why they did it, but that's just such a cliche thing to do, and it just seemed extremely heavy handed. But we'll talk a little bit more about Aya later. Let's talk about Hal and what goes on with him. I've already talked about Hal's bravery and his leadership, but here we see Hal's humility. He literally says that he is going to go and beg the Zamorans, the Star Sapphires, for help. And we see that Hal's Hal's compassion, Hal's love for Carol Ferris has paid off. The Queen Apopo, I forget how exactly you say her name, but she has learned from her niece that the Star Sapphires had been going down the wrong path, and that's why she is willing to help Hal out. And again, there Hal demonstrated the emotion of genuine love for Carol Ferris, and it not only, of course, helped them win the day, it helped them set the Zamorans on the right path, the Starfires, I should say. And here all of that comes back. Here we see that the little alliances, the good that Hal has done over these past seasons, have come together to allow him to achieve victory. And that is very solid, very good writing. So I will have to give the show's creators a good amount of credit for that. Now, I was a little worried when we kind of went off to La La Land, where Hal doesn't even remember that he's Green Lantern and all of that. But they did pay that off, I think, well enough in terms of storytelling to justify doing that. It certainly did amp up the tension because we all know, like, wait a minute, Oa is literally about to be destroyed and Hal's off having amnesia. What's going on here? We need to get this sorted out immediately. It certainly served to really amp up the already very high level of tension in the show. And it gives a chance to give Carol some more characterization, to give her a heroic moment. And that was done quite well, I think. So again, props to the writers for doing that. Let's see, what else? I'm looking off over at my notes as I always do. So I do like that they did take the time to really give us, the stars, to showcase both the Star Sapphires and, even though we don't get to see a huge amount of them, the Blue Lanterns here. It is my personal theory, and this isn't something I normally do, but I am going to indulge in just a tiny bit of speculation here, that as the show goes along, we're going to slowly start building towards the whole War of Light storyline from the comics, where we get to see all of the various Lantern Corps battling each other. And if you've read that story in the comics, it is truly an absolutely incredible epic. It is one of the best Green Lantern stories ever told. And frankly, if you're talking about science fiction, science fantasy, space action kind of stuff, I would put that story right up there with Star Wars. It is genuinely that good. But anyway, let's see. Let's talk about one thing that I was disappointed about was the character of Drusa. The way things were presented when we saw her last, felt like she was going to be a really big deal in the invasion of Oa. And while her hijacking Aya was certainly very important in allowing things to play out the way they did, I honestly was expecting something much bigger than what we got. So I was honestly a little bit disappointed there. So let's talk about what happens after the Red Lanterns land on Oa. We get to see, of all people, Appa Aliapsa, the guy who among the Guardians has been the big jerk, the adversary to Ganthet, the one who basically engineered his exile, and Hal and Kilowog's sparring partner in all of this. The guy who said that the Guardians were right to just ignore what had happened in the Forbidden Zone. Well, here we see him do a complete 180. Now, earlier I had talked about how maybe Appa did have a point about the Guardians not wanting to admit what they had done. but we really hadn't seen very much growth for him as a character. But here we get that. When Seed is injured by the Red Lanterns, it is Appa who takes the time to grab her and make sure that she gets to safety. When all is said and done, it is Appa who steps forward and says, you know what, we need to make, I will personally see to it that restitution is made for this. And it's even, this is probably in no small part due to when they are cornered in the control room with Salak, the multi-armed Red Lantern. I'm sorry, the multi-armed Green Lantern. When Saeed points out to them that this is probably how the people in the Forbidden Zone must have felt, the terror they felt when they were being attacked, when they were being slaughtered by the Manhunters. And I think that really did get through to Appa. So, you know, I have to give the writers credit once again for taking somebody who could have very easily just have been a very one-dimensional character, someone whose sole purpose in the story was to be a foil, an opponent, an obstacle to the heroes, and given him some, you know, to apply it as far as you can to an alien, to give him some humanity, to give him some humility, to have him learn from his mistakes, for him to behave in a selfless and compassionate way. So again, that really does, I think, speak well to the writers, to the characters, and to just everybody who helped make this show possible. And let's talk about, of course, Razor. Again, a lot of what happens with Razor in this episode is only implied. It's implied that, and you can actually interpret it a lot of ways. Is Razor genuinely in love with Aya, or is it just the love for his dead wife, I guess she was, his wife, girlfriend, whatever she was, that he still feels when he sees her? Now, again, I'm sure the folks who are big into shipping are probably battling it out to the death on the internet forums over this one. I personally really have no huge opinion about it one way or the other. Honestly, it doesn't matter in my book, because it's as the Queen says, Razor is not so far gone as he thinks he is. He still is capable of love. And that, and his connection to Aya, has been one of his strongest points this entire season. And I'm honestly very interested to see where they will go with Razor if there is a second season. Because, well, now what's going to happen with him now that the Red Lanterns are defeated? And keep in mind that his need to recite the Red Lantern Oath, to draw upon rage in order to fuel his abilities, has not gone anywhere. So that potentially is a time bomb that really could go off on our heroes. Now, let me see. Anything else? Well, okay, first of all, I have to give a lot of credit to the folks that made the show. There was just some absolutely phenomenal action. I was really just taken back by when Zox sort of pulls out that buzzsaw maneuver on Salak when he was attacking the Green Lantern Guardians. And Salak is no slouch himself. He literally conjures himself up 4 swords and is ready to go to town, and does a Jedi-worthy job of knocking back some of those blaster bolts at the Red Lantern soldiers. So that was certainly impressive. And then we even get to the no-holds-barred fight between Hal and Atrocitus. Now, to step away from the action for a moment and talk about Hal and Atrocitus' characters, this is something that, again, speaks so incredibly well of the writing on this show, that they're willing to have the hero, Hal Jordan, stop and say, you know what? You, Atrocitus, you are right. Your rage is justified. And just think about that. The hero of the show is pointing out that the villain of the show is justified in not the things that he has done, because Atrocitus has, for his own ridiculous and selfish and hateful reasons, destroyed countless innocents, even though that is the very thing that he claims to be trying to avenge, the death of innocents. But Hal is willing to point out that the Red Lanterns do have a legitimate grievance, and he says that they are willing to work with them. And again, this is Hal demonstrating incredible compassion, incredible strength of character, incredible truth of character. And it shows us that Atrocitus, while he does, of course, have great power, really lacks any of that. All Atrocitus has is rage. He has nothing else. Even if they were to kill all the Guardians, well, after that, then what? He would have nothing. In fact, he would probably just find some ridiculous reason to go out and kill more innocent people. And I mean, it even says so much that after all of that, Zox is the one who is willing to, strike a deal to accept the Guardians' apology, their offer of restitution. And it is pointed out that, of course, he's doing this for his own selfish reasons, and Zox is certainly not a moral or trustworthy person. But he does, at the very least, have one thing that Atrocitus doesn't, and that's pragmatism. And I certainly do enjoy seeing stories where the villains are willing to be pragmatic about things, where they can even, as we see here, even reach an accord with the heroes. That's just something you don't normally see in movies or TV or books or things like that. So again, I have to give the writers of this show a tremendous amount of credit. So with that said, let's talk about this season as a whole. In general, I think the show starts out a little bit weak. There are certainly some episodes, like episode 3, that were overall kind of weak. There were certainly some not so great moments. But overall, in terms of character development, in terms of storytelling, in terms of acting, in terms of faithfulness to the comics, this is miles and miles above the live action Green Lantern movie. This is what that movie should have been. And this really is, I think, outside of the comics, the best vehicle you could ever ask for introducing new people to the amazing story of Green Lantern. I mean, this might show, I think, has everything that it needs to be on par with such classic fare as Batman the Animated Series, along with Superman the Animated Series, and other extremely strong superhero shows like the old Spider-Man and X-Men cartoons from the 90s that really kicked things up such a notch. So overall, yes, this show, it has had its flaws, it has had its low moments, but overall, this is a genuinely very good, outright excellent superhero TV show. And if you're a fan of superheroes, if you just like good old-fashioned sci-fi action, then this show is not going to disappoint you. And if you know other folks out there who are into that sort of thing, urge them to give it a try. It's probably not going to end up being for everyone, but I'm sure that there are more than enough folks out there who have never seen the show who, if they gave it a try, would get on board as enthusiastically as I have. And I certainly am hoping for a season 2. Blue light of hope, folks. Anyway, folks, that's all I have for this time. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And you can, of course, follow me on Twitter. I will like to take a moment to thank everybody who's subscribed to me recently. I will try and keep myself as entertaining on Twitter as I am here. Hopefully, well, hopefully I can do that with a character limit. But I'll certainly give it my best shot. Until next time, folks, take care and have a good one.